I'm Dr. Scott Lyons, and you're watching or listening to The Gently Used Human. There's a lot of talk about self-love these days, but what does it mean to truly love and accept yourself, especially in relationship with others? Could it be that it's an act of embracing our most vulnerable selves that provides a portal to deeper intimacy with others? Well, today I'm joined by the inspiring Dr. Laura Berman, a renowned expert in the field of relationships, self-worth, and emotional resilience. Dr. Berman shares her personal and professional insights into the transformative power of self-love and the pivotal role it plays in shaping our connections with others. We explore the delicate interplay between pain and pleasure and the unique concept of quantum sex, where energy and emotion intertwine. Join us as we uncover the profound impact of self-love not only in our personal lives, but in the way we relate to the world around us. Let's dive in. Dr. Laura, welcome to The Gently Used Human. I am so elated to have you on the show and have you bring your wisdom to the listeners of The Gently Used Human show. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to join you. Thanks for asking.
My pleasure. Speaking of pleasure, how's that for a transition?
That was good.
I want to talk about love, sex, and relationships just off the bat. How do we love and be loved better?
Yeah, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for that.
Yeah.
I came here for that, evidently. It really, if I had to sum it up, it really, and I'm not just saying this for the cutesy Hallmark card sound of it. It really is true that everything in terms of what you really want in your love life starts with you and your relationship, who you attract in, who you are attracted to, the nature of your dynamics in your relationship, how your partner is or isn't showing up for you. A lot of that obviously is beyond your control, but a surprisingly huge amount of it really starts with how willing you are to love and accept and wholly understand how worthy of love you really are. And once you do that, and the more you do that, and the more you become friends with your shadows, and the more you resolve your wounds, and the more you move through your traumas, those big T and little t traumas, the higher caliber of love you're capable of giving and receiving. There is a direct correlation.
The famous quote by Dr. RuPaul.
Which one? RuPaul is a genius and deserves 12 PhDs. But
I think so. I'm going to just call her Dr. RuPaul for sure.
Yeah.
The idea of how you're going to love someone else until you love yourself.
Yeah.
And I want to both honor that and challenge it with you.
Yeah.
If we have a moment together, because we know from the research, sometimes if we can't love ourselves, it's partly because it wasn't modeled.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the process of loving ourselves is to receive the love of others and absorb the felt sense, the embodiment of it to possibly know it for ourselves. That's an idea I'm throwing out. I want to see where that lands for you.
I'm not opposed to that idea within reason, but
okay.
I will return the challenge a little bit and say that, so let me just tell you what I agree with, which is that you're absolutely right. If you haven't had the experience of being loved and accepted and cherished and held, that one of the ways that you start to connect with that is through the experience of that, right? And so I totally agree with that. The tricky part is that when you are someone who's living from a really wounded place and who has never had that experience, you are willing to settle for breadcrumbs. And you also, on an energetic level, and over the past, I'm sure we'll get into this, but over the past 10 to 15 years of my career, I have added much more metaphysical elements to my work and quantum physics and all and so from that standpoint, right? When we are when we are living from a place of unhealed, deep wounding, and we are trying to love and be loved from that place. The people who we're going to attract in and be attracted to in order to love us, who are going to love us, they are going to have a thimbleful of love. Their full cup of love, huge runneth over cup, is going to be a thimble size versus a big gulp, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that you won't get love and that you won't receive love, but you also may get and receive abuse or gaslighting or dysfunction, because until we work through that stuff, that's what we are an energetic match for, whether we like it or not. And it sucks because then we get into relationship after relationship with people who can't love us in the way that we deserve. And then our low self-worth gets cemented even more. See, I'm not worthy of love. See, I can't be loved. See, I don't deserve love. And so it kind of mirrors back these false beliefs we have about ourselves. So that's why I think it's tricky. But that doesn't mean that you can't create. I mean, I have, my husband sort of teases me, and I have to work against collecting too many broken little birds, because I am very attracted to friends. I mean, obviously not love, because I have my love of 20 plus years, but friends. I feel I'm so good at loving because I love myself so deeply and I've healed myself so deeply. So I have immense capacity for love. And I have so many friends who I connect with, even recently, who I can see and feel that lack of experience. And I want to, they have all these other wonderful attributes that make me want to be friends. I mean, it's not like, it's not a mutual thing, but I'm also very aware that I'm giving them that experience of being cherished and loved and accepted that they may not have had before. So you can create that in friendships. Yeah. And in connections. You don't have to go and enmesh your life with someone who isn't going to love you in the way you deserve in order to start building a capacity of being loved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering if we can, because you were starting to share your own personal journey, and can we talk about Dr. Laura BSL, before self-love, and then post BSL? What were you like before and after?
I was codependent, people pleasing, hot mess before.
Woo, sing it.
I grew up in a very privileged and compared to most people, so I'm not going to knock it in many ways. Yeah. And my parents did the absolute best they could and had the best intentions. But my mother was a depressed, completely unempowered codependent. Who completely parentified me. I mean, I joke that I was conceived to take care of her because I was conceived when they found out my dad was going to Vietnam, and she didn't. And I had an older sister, but my mother really wanted a baby that she could cuddle and snuggle and who would keep her company. She was a real introvert, very socially anxious. So she conceived me in order to be her little security blanket and comfort while my dad was gone. And it and it continued from there. I was, which was obviously with all of these traumas we go through, there's a light side, there's a beautiful side to it and the gifts we get from that. I wouldn't be the therapist I am today had I not been conceived to do it. Right. Yeah. But my dad could be very emotionally abusive. He was definitely a toxic narcissist. There was, a lot of philandering, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of criticism, a lot of over-sexualization of us and of women. So, there was a lot of trauma in there. And I did not grow up. I grew up externally referenced, I would call it. My sense of safety was only available when I was lifting my mother up, when I was making someone laugh, when I was, So when I was really little, people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say a nurse or a comedian. And I never really understood when they would recount that later. I would be like, why did I say that? And eventually I realized, of course, that was my little girl's understanding that there were two things I could do to keep myself safe and make all the grownups around me well enough to take care of me. And that was to make them laugh or to take care of them, be their caretaker instead of the reverse. So, I went into all sorts of toxic relationships and emotionally abusive and philandering partners. and even got married to one of them. So I had I've had my share of dramas and traumas for sure. And it really wasn't until probably 2010. So maybe, I've been doing this for 30 years. So halfway through my career, I guess, so far, my mother died, and she was like my codependent anchor person. I was so enmeshed with her. And so that was like the most devastating loss I could ever imagine. That broke me open. That was a really big, what I call AFGE, another frickin' growth experience. Those things that like break you apart and break you open and are a gift in the end, because they throw all the pieces of the puzzle up in the air and a new picture is made. But that was really the beginning of what I like to call my reawakening, because I think I was really awake as a little girl, but it kind of got conditioned and teased out of me, because my family couldn't hold that. But during that time, after she died, my mom died of what was essentially metastasized breast cancer in 2011. And by 2012, with no risk factors, I had breast cancer in the same breast.
Wow.
Because I was filming a television show for Oprah. I had 3 young kids. I had too much going on in my life to grieve. I was sad, of course, but like I had to hold it together. So I just repressed, compressed, whatever was needed, kept taking care of everyone and everything around me until I got sick. And so that was really the beginning of a huge shift internally. And by the way, reading your book about drama addiction, I was a severe drama addict, and attracted it and was completely attracted to it, especially because that was the only way, one of the key ways that I could get my dad's peaceful attention was when I was sick or there was some crisis. That's when he would step up. So part of my healing, and I wouldn't have even called it that till reading your book, but part of my healing was definitely recognizing that and moving beyond that, among many other things.
It's wild when crisis and being sick, that sort of, that chaos is the love language that bonds us.
Isn't that crazy?
It's the currency of love. I won't even call it a love language. It's the currency for love.
Yeah.
That what we have to pay out to be attended to.
Yeah.
And, as you're talking, and I want to hear more about the story in just a moment as well, but like, you especially talk about love languages. Mm-hmm. But like, there's something that you brought up when you were sharing, which is maybe our love language isn't the same as our safe language.
Yeah.
Like what you were referring to with your mom and your parents, especially, is like, these are the things you had to do, say, or be in order to create safety.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is what I love about relationships. And the reason that I never get bored doing what I do is that here's the bottom line. When you are having a relationship with someone, and this means any real relationship, but especially a love relationship or a close relationship, you are actually having a relationship with yourself through that other person. So all your wounds, and this is one of my, when I see a couple, one of the things that it's kind of like a secret game. I always share it with them, but it's like the secret game I play with myself and them, watching as their story unfolds. And I understand each of their, because I always tell them, I don't give a shit what the truth is. I care about what each of your realities are, because that's what you're operating from. So who cares what the truth is? Like, let's find out what each of you think the truth is, right?
Yeah.
And as that story unfolds, it is so perfect. It is so perfect how we choose people who are going to trigger our shit. Mm-hmm. And we fall in love with them because of that. And we don't even realize we're doing it, right? Yeah. So like I fell in love. One of the reasons I was attracted to my husband is because, he is so on top of everything and so not someone I have to caretake or parent or lift up or, he's got his shit together. He gets shit done. He's on top of stuff, and that's the gift side, right? Yeah. The shadow side, which was going to trigger the shit out of me, is that he can be controlling. And he can be, sort of a nervous Nelly, and I can feel held back by him. And so, like, even when we were raising our kids when they were little, I would get so mad at him and so frustrated because he was so protective. Like, he didn't want him to jump on a trampoline. He didn't want him to, he was seeing danger wherever danger lurked. And I was so annoyed because I felt like he couldn't just like let everybody have fun, Yeah. And then I slowly realized, like, oh, him doing that actually allows me to let loose and not worry as much about their safety when we're together. Because Dad, I can be, body surfing with them while Dad is lifeguarding, so there are gifts in that. Yeah. There are gifts in all those things that drive us crazy about our partner, but also we choose our partner because of our wounds, If you had a parent who wasn't emotionally there for you or emotionally neglected you, you're not going to necessarily choose a partner who's overtly emotionally neglected, but you're likely, if you haven't worked through that, to choose a partner who's a workaholic. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or who's now we have a social media, right? Who's a social media addict. We have that diagnosis now to add to the
something that repeats it. I mean, and this is an interesting thing. It's a very Gestalt approach, which is saying, like, we're as humans, we're always looking to complete and finish the healing process of the wound. So we enter back into opportunities to open the wound to possibly heal it. Yeah. Thus, we have so many of the relationships.
And we're attracted to what we know. We're attracted to you. So there's that unconscious longing that this time I'll get it right and I'll work it through and I'll complete the circle and I'll, but then there's also this, that's why I always say to people, when you're dating and you first meet someone and you say, oh, I have butterflies, that is your system's warning. So, that's your body's warning system saying, watch out, danger. Like this is not, when you meet someone who's really your person and there's an element of feeling like you've always known them. Sure. But it's a feeling of like the excitement that you might have moving into your dream house, that you've always longed for, and how beautiful and exciting and fulfilling and like, yay, it's going to be. It's not like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. What if it doesn't work out? Like, like that energy it's the energy of coming home in a really exciting way, not coming home to your little hovel where you've been living for 20 years, but coming home to something magical. That's what it feels like when you've met the right one.
I call that burst of unregulated energy the trauma tingles.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Trauma tingles and butterflies. Same
trauma
thing.
Trauma tingles and butterflies.
People don't recognize the difference, especially if they've grown up with a lot of trauma tingles.
Yeah. It's basically a beacon to say I'm home, and it's exciting. And which is, kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But also part of our innate process of being human. I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout. So, BSL, before self-love, and then what was the crux at what point you started going, I think I'm going to try this whole self-love situation out. Yeah. And how did it go down? How did you generate all that care and compassion and love for yourself?
Well, I mean, listen, I was always, as a therapist, I was always aware of the importance of self-worth. But I think what I didn't fully understand was the fundamental difference between self-esteem and self-worth. Those are two totally different things, right? So self-esteem is, I love myself because I'm a compassionate person. I'm a good friend. I'm a committed mother. I am good at X, Y, Z. I can do ABC, whatever. So there's a reason, right? Self-worth is understanding. And to me, and I really do believe this, there is a spiritual element to it. I don't mean a religious element, but a spiritual element to it, because self-worth says, I deserve all the joy, all the love, all the abundance in the world simply because I exist. Because the fact that I am here, each of us, that's not just me, each of us is here, is an insane, impossible to wrap your head around when you think about it, miracle. The fact that that sperm and that egg came together and like actually took and made it 9 months, and you were born and you're here in this body and you get to have this life, like that in and of itself is an insane gift and miracle, and all the evidence in and of itself that I feel like we need to prove that we are worthy, right? But what worthiness is understanding that you are a gift, that your life is a gift, and that you're a divine expression of love, that just because you exist, you deserve it. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around intellectually, right? I feel I learned rather quickly it's something that really needed to be understood viscerally, like physically and energetically and emotionally more than intellectually, because it sounds like, okay, fine. When you think about it intellectually. Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But when you start to tune in, whether it's through meditation or prayer, or, now we're seeing more with the plant medicine journeys, and you want to do those in a really guided and conscious way. But there are all these different ways that people are accessing their divine connection and starting to really feel into that. The truth of it that's always there, but most of us are too busy and too drama filled and too distracted to feel and to tune into. But as you get quiet, and so that's what happened to me, is that my life had to, I always say the universe kind of scratches at the door, and usually we don't listen, and then they knock and then they pound. And if you still aren't listening, they'll blow the whole freaking house down, And that's what happened to me with my mother dying. And then I had cancer. I had to completely stop my life. My kids were like, one was in total panic attacks, one was refusing to go to school, and one was suicidal. I had to stop all my work I had a television show and a 5-day-a-week live radio show on Oprah Radio. Had to stop all of that, completely stop my life. And it was completely falling apart. And I'm going through chemo and breast cancer and everything else. So it took that.
Just that.
I was a stubborn case. It took that to break me apart enough that the light could finally come in. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So as I was like trying, it's mostly my kids. Like at that point I was like, okay, I got to do something about my kids, in particular, the oldest, who's now, 27, but he was in 9th grade at the time, who's suicidal, so out of desperation, when my normal techniques of therapy and neuropsych evaluations and counseling, wasn't working, I went to a medium psychic who actually has become one of my dearest friends and greatest teachers, because she blew my mind. I hadn't been to one since I was, in college. I didn't really subscribe to that stuff. I mean, I didn't mind it, but I was very much in the 3D realm at that point, and had shut that part off when I was a little girl. And this woman, I go to see her mostly about my eldest, who was like, triage. He was the highest, the biggest issue. Yeah. And she said, oh, her name is Therese Rowley. She's amazing. But she's like, oh, let me go into his field. And I'm thinking, all right, he's in school right now. You're going into his field. And she said, oh, he's clairsentient, which I had never heard of before, but it's basically an empath, right?
Yeah.
What many of us are. It's where you feel the feelings that other people are feeling. But she said, but the interesting thing with him and with a lot of these kids who are being, he was being diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, depression, anxiety. One woman had even told me, a therapist had told me that she thought he might be on the spectrum because she was doing an evaluation with him and she was smiling really big and saying, what am I feeling? And he said, sad. And so she thought he can't read social cues, right? He can't read facial cues. Well, it all made sense because what Therese told me, she's like, the problem with him and many of these kids is that they feel what everyone else is feeling, even those feelings they're in denial about, but they don't know the difference between what they're feeling and the feelings they're picking up. So when he gets a feeling of depression or anxiety or fear, it's not even necessarily his. Right. So when that therapist was smiling at him, he was feeling that she was really sad. So he said, you're sad, but he couldn't really tell the difference. So he would come up with reasons why I feel sad. It must be because the sky is gray or whatever. So he was all over the place and like an ungrounded electrical cord. And so it made so much sense when she said that to me, and I was like, and she said, here's what you need to do. You need to be really clear, like really calm when you're around him. And I said, well, I never let my kid, even if I'm having the most stressful day, I'm, smiling and calm. I'm not going to put that on them. She's like, no. Like it has to be internal. Yeah. So she showed me for the first time how to move into what I now call the quantum love zone or home frequency, how to move my system into energetic coherence where the electromagnetic field of your brain and your heart are synchronized. And there's been all this fascinating research that I then had to dive into about how when we move into that state, we actually are impacting, they've been able to measure it 30 feet, but it's much further than that.
Is that the heart map work?
Heart Math Institute.
Yeah.
That's one of the many people that are doing amazing research in this. So she's like, so she showed me basically how to move myself into that state. Wow. And then she said, and if he's willing, give him a hug where you pull love into your heart and then you from above or even behind, and then you move that into his heart, heart to heart hug. Like I had never heard of this before. Now, all these years later, he's now 27. He still asks me for what he calls grounding hugs. He loves them. But when I came home that day, he was in 9th grade, thought I was a total idiot, depressed, anxious, disenfranchised from the world. And, I move myself into coherence and I go into his room. I'm like, I have to tell you something. I met this woman today and I told him what she said and I'm expecting him to just like roll his eyes and make some obnoxious crack. Cause he's a real scientist and everything was factual and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I think what you're saying is true. And then I said, oh, well, let me give you this hug that she told me about. And he melted. And this kid didn't want to touch me, much less melt. And then I didn't say another word. God forbid I seem invested in anything because he would, reject it. But then a week later, he came home and said, I was in my locker today and I was having a pretty good day. And then all of a sudden I just felt really angry and depressed. And then I realized, oh, there's a girl right in the locker, a few lockers down. It must be her that's angry and depressed. And that was the beginning of his healing. And I was like, what the hell just happened? I got to understand this. And then I started diving into that, and that led me to quantum physics. And then that led me to what eventually became my own awakening in quantum love. But it started with desperation to help my kids.
Wow. Did you ever read that book? What was it called? Indigo Kids.
Yes, he was a total indigo child.
Because he's of that age group where like they were all, yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, but Lord knows as their parent, it's been a shit show. All of my kids are that.
Yeah.
Star children, rainbow children, indigo children. Lord help me. I mean, God bless the world, but Lord help me raising those people.
Yeah. Do just for those who are listening, Indigo Children is a book, or not just a book, but it's representative of children who have these incredible empathic capacities, as Dr. Laura was talking about in relation to her son.
Yeah, they all do. They're
they
very attuned. They came here, from a spiritual perspective. If you subscribe to this, I do. It's believed that many of them have come here at this. They're most of the kids being born now are this because they're coming to help, save us. They're tapped in and tuned in and spiritually connected and deep and wise and very, very, very old souls. And, they're going to change the world. But they're hard as hell to raise in the world and in the traditional school system. God help us.
Yeah. Yeah. When I worked in pediatrics years ago, I would just hand out that book quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. That's a blessing that you did that, because a lot of parents, don't understand. And certainly healthcare professionals and teachers historically don't understand. But yeah, they're powerful, very intuitive, very tapped in and tuned in, very, very wise, and in many ways much wiser than us. But they aren't going to sit down and be quiet at their desk and listen. They're not going to do that.
No, it goes against their very nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you reached this point via this process with your son. And where as you're pulling love in and giving it to him, did you keep some for yourself?
Well, that's an interesting question, because at first I didn't fully understand. This is an evolution, right? So this started in 2011. So it's been a continued evolution for me. But I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, I don't even remember. I think I was on some retreat. I don't remember how it kind of finally, I had this epiphany, this oh my God, but it's changed my life, that we are not supposed to give energy from us. We are supposed to give energy through us. Mm-hmm. And I was never doing that. So when I was sharing love or even sharing energy with someone, and I work a lot with energy and moving energy through the body and from, exchanging energy, it had never occurred to me before then that that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be pulling energy in from the universe, from God, from love, from whatever you want to call it, and moving it through me. And when I got that, it changed everything. Because now, even when I'm working with someone, I'm aware that what I'm giving them, or even what I'm saying, or even as I'm talking to you now, before, and I did this before we before I hopped on this recording, I always kind of ground and open my channels and invite love to move through me. And so when I'm speaking, when I'm therapizing, when I'm healing, working with people, I'm very aware that none of it's coming from me. I'm just letting myself be used. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm curious if in the process of letting love move through you, that it also meant that you stopped giving yourself up. There was the self-abandonment, the codependency was no longer a thing, and you actually got to be home in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have given every cell in order to be accepted and loved. I would give everything away, which I think is partly why I ended up with cancer. I mean, for many of us, I have yet to meet a person who had breast cancer, female or male, who doesn't overgive to everyone and under-receive themselves. It seems to be universal. And it took that, right? I had to have the whole house blown down for me to finally say, fuck this. I'm not giving everything of myself anymore. I can't. Yeah. I got sick. I can't anymore. And that was the first time in my life that I actually, and it was really uncomfortable. And there has been phases of this, because I still had to peel some of those layers of the onion away around just receiving support. Because in my family, that was a burden. I wasn't allowed to need anything. No. Because there was no one had any capacity to give to me. They just needed me to give to them. Right. And that's how I stayed safe and got approval and love. But, if I needed too much, or was, if I was too needy or really scared and needed too much comforting or anything else, that was It was a burden, and I would be kind of annoying. I would be annoying. So I had to really learn, and that's what it took to teach me to receive and to not just be the giver. But, getting back to the self-worth thing, really the biggest path to self-worth is when you start to tap in and tune in and let love move through you, and you start to really feel how much you are loved and how much love and abundance is in you and of you and moving through you all the time, even if you're not aware of it. When you start to do that, it's kind of impossible not to know how loved you are. It's kind of impossible not to feel it.
That's such a beautiful image too. And I forgot the guy's name. I think Craig is his last name, who is like a big researcher. And research is interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of supports our own embodied phenomenological experience or our own embodied experience. But one of the things his main research showed was the more we get self-abandon, the less correlation to self-esteem. So no self-esteem, no embodiment essentially equaled no self-esteem.
Yes.
So the more we could stay here in ourselves, the more this sense of self-esteem or self-love organically emerged, because it couldn't not.
Yes. Yeah. It can't not emerge once you're in it and allowing it. But because of our traumas and everything else, we learn early, and I did too, not to be. I mean, I would say it wasn't until 2.5 years ago that I fully came into my body out of, once again, necessity. So it's been an evolution.
Can you tell me more about that process of that fullness of landing in your body?
Yeah. I mean, once again, it came, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't even call this an AFGE. This was, like an AFGE, another fucking explosion. I mean, it was more than an experience. But when my 16-year-old was murdered 2.5 years ago with fentanyl poisoning. So a dealer had gotten in touch with him on Snapchat and gave him a colorful menu of, Percocet, one Xanax, Percocet, whatever, Coke, cannabis, for a few dollars, delivered to your house like a pizza. And this, I had no idea, but at the time, but it's, prolific on Snapchat, on social media in general. So he went ahead and ordered something, sheltering at home during the pandemic, and took it on Super Bowl Sunday. And 65% of these drugs on the street, it was laced with fentanyl, where it only takes a few grains of sand to kill you, of fentanyl, a few grains. Yeah. So he died in his room on Super Bowl Sunday. His brother and I discovered him. And you can imagine, I don't have to describe the impossible to describe depth and breadth of the devastation of that. And all I can say is thank you. I'm so unbelievably grateful that I had all of these experiences leading up to this, in particular, discovering and writing Quantum Love, because I didn't even have to believe. I fully knew and had the experience of the fact that we are all pure vibrating atomic energy. We aren't solid. We seem solid, but on the quantum level, if we were to look at ourselves through an atomic microscope, we're vibrating atoms. All of us are. We're energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed. So I didn't have to discover or accept or learn the fact that energy can't die. We change, we can only change form.
Yeah.
So his body died, but he is still, so that's been he's still here, and I can still access him, sort of like a long distance relationship, but that was a huge comfort. But still, I couldn't breathe for months. I literally couldn't move for a year. I was completely demolished. And a week after it wasn't even a week. It was like 3 or 4 days after he died. I was sitting on the beach where I go to heal and be. And, I have lots of clairs, that I've developed through the years. Claire, I know things, I see things. I had never heard things, how some people hear things. Yeah. But I did. Sitting on the beach, I heard inside my head, do you want to live or die? And it was a very clear question. And I was completely shocked when I was so immediately knew the answer that yes, I want to live, but it's kind of hard to describe in words. But, we all know, and I was even talking earlier about what a gift life is. We all know that it's a gift, but it was like, I understood that on such a deep, it felt physical how deeply I understood what a miracle it was to live, to breathe. And also through the way he died and losing him, because he was, all the other people in my life who had died after prolonged illnesses, right? So this visceral understanding of like 1 second you can be here and anything can happen. A second from now, you may not be here. Life is so fragile and we live in denial of that. And it's such a gift that we get to be here. So I was like, yes, I want to live. And I knew what the question meant. It wasn't that I was going to kill myself, die by suicide. I would never do that. But I already knew what unresolved grief can do to you from my breast cancer journey. So I knew what that question meant. And so when I said, yes, I want to live, then the voice said, well, then you need to leave. And I was like, what are you talking about? I need to leave. And the voice said, you need to go into the woods and leave your family behind. What? Leave your family behind, go into the woods and be at least a week in your pain, fully in your pain, or you're not going to live. And so I don't know. I can't believe I did this, but I went home to my poor husband, whose son had just died, 4 days ago. And our youngest was still living at our home. He was a sophomore in high school. And, I said, I'm sorry, I have to leave and go into the woods or I'm going to die. I'm going to go for a week. I'm laughing now. It wasn't funny at the time. And he didn't say, like, he totally didn't fuss, didn't complain, didn't resist. And I went with my best friend, Tina, who's like a master at holding space. She can handle any kind of emotion. And she was my grief concierge, I called her. But 1440 Multiversity in Santa Cruz had reached out to me because the whole world, quickly heard the news. And they said, if we're closed for the pandemic, but if you want to come with your family or whatever, we'll open the campus for you, which was so amazing. And it all just fell into place. So I went there for a week into the redwoods, and all my healer friends either Zoomed in or came to visit. And I did body work and breath work and grief yoga and forest bathing and hours spent in the mother tree wailing on her. There's the mother trees of the redwood forest there on the campus. And there was just, but here's the thing, back to your original question. I know I went on a tangent, but there's a purpose here of how I came back into my body. Yeah. That was how. Because I got the very clear message that if you don't let yourself go all the way into this seemingly bottomless pit of pain, you are going to die. And I knew that. Like, I somehow agreed. And so with support through, somatic healing therapist, while I was there every single day, I spent at least an hour with a somatic experiencing therapist who helped me come fully into my body so that I could fully feel and release the pain that was currently in it. And I immediately learned what I try to help people understand today, which is that we're scared shitless to go there because we really feel like I'm never going to come out of there. It will take me over. But in fact, the opposite is true. It's like a pressure valve, like on a pressure cooker. It's like a ton of the steam gets released and you feel clearer and calmer and lighter and more grounded and more present in your body. We can't be in our bodies when we're unwilling to feel the feelings there. And if we're unwilling to feel the feelings, that's what causes disease, dis-ease, the inflammation and the chronic diseases and the cancers. So I quickly realized as I experienced it, because it only takes once or twice and you learn this, they're like, oh my God, that was intense. But whew, it's like taking the biggest, most intense, huge emotional poop,
Yeah.
That was not the word I was expecting. But now that you say it, fuck yes. Yes, I do know what you mean. That's the name of the episode. The biggest emotional poop you've ever had.
But it's true.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And so after that, I became committed. And for a year straight, every day, even when I didn't freaking want to do it because I had woke up feeling okay for a change, I would go into my little corner. My husband knew not to be concerned about the sounds that came out of the room. And I would just go through my process, which I teach people to do now, of coming into my body, grounding there, scanning it, putting my attention on any of the sensations, and then letting my body take over. And it just takes 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't take long. And your entire world changes. So that's when I came back into and boy, is it more fun life when you're in your freaking body. It's like you don't know what you can get you don't know what you can get used to until you get used to it. But I didn't realize what I was giving up. I didn't even realize how little I was in my body. I would have said I was someone who was pretty embodied after all the trauma work I had done. Yeah. But I didn't realize how in my body I could be and how much better life would be there. My intuition, my inner guidance, my capacity for sensations and joy and connection and clarity and discernment. It's all better when you're in it.
Yeah. I mean, and this, I think, is, we were talking about what is the link between all the things that you do. I feel like this, like, you're here to be with what's here. So whether that's in relationships, whether we're talking about the work you do with sex or relationships or couples or grief.
Yeah.
Like the common denominator here is that you're here to and can be with any of these things.
Any of these. And that there all seem to be things that nobody else wants to talk about or is comfortable talking about, right? Sex and death.
Sex and death.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're all like, in that existential way, we know we're going to very well come into this world. We're going to be birthed. We're likely to have sex at some point.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. And we know that there's going to be death. We're going to experience death.
Yeah. All are true. The only thing, sex and death, the only thing I don't talk about is taxes. But sex and death are the other two sure things.
I'd watch your next New York Times bestseller book about taxes. Now, you just set yourself up for that.
Right.
This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. So it's interesting because we could like, again, separate them out, and I could be like, okay, tell me about sex and tell me about death, but like I might say, Dr. Laura, tell me about sex and death.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about that. Like, I'm like, who am I? You know? Like,
So back to the existentialism. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, how do I
Yeah.
even describe, like, I'm this person that for 30 years has been devoted to helping people build better intimacy, love, sex, relationships. And I'm still super committed to that. And I love that aspect of my work. I'm less interested in describing how to give a perfect blowjob, but I can do that. I'm more interested in talking about, quantum sex. Like that's much more exciting to me, but I can talk about sex, love, and relationships all day and be totally content. And I feel so pulled and guided and supported. And I've been flabbergasted by how helpless and untrained and unknowledgeable most of us are about how to grieve, and so, and we're all grieving right now, so I'm so drawn to helping people be with loss. And also the fact that I've discovered that, grief is actually a phenomenal, powerful, impossibly beautiful portal of transformation. And you can not only survive it, which of course you can do, but you can thrive through it. That doesn't mean that you wanted it to happen or that you're glad it happened, that loss, but it is a powerful, transformative portal that is so profound and beautiful if you have support and know how to navigate it. And most people don't. We don't like talking about it. We don't like thinking about it. We just want to push it away. But it is up for I don't know anyone who isn't experiencing some sort of grief right now, even if a loved one of yours didn't die. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we have all lost relationships, jobs, identities, friends, loved ones, and so even just with what's happening in the world, there's collective grief right now. So I feel so pulled to that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just doing it, but it's also kind of confusing at the same time. But I think if I had to create a thread, or if I, as I think about the thread between sex and death, it's really all creation. It's love, it's an expression of love. Even if you're having a one night stand, you're loving yourself, right? And you're loving your body through that. Sex is always an expression of self-love or mutual love or other love, in its purest form, even if we're unconscious of it, right? Yeah. It's an expression of love, and grief is a direct, expression of love. The degree to which you grieve is the degree to which you love. We wouldn't grieve if we didn't love, So I see that thread. I see the thread of creation. Our sexual center is our creative center. Creation of life comes from sex, and death is the other side of that circle. I don't know. Like, I'm still figuring out what the thread is and letting it unfold. But I'm simultaneously intrigued by this evolution in me, but I'm also confused, just in terms of like the external, not inside myself, but just in terms of like, how do I help this make sense to people? I'm not sure yet. And I'm not sure I care, but I know eventually I'll need to.
Well, I mean, maybe the common thread is that you're just helping all these gently used humans be more in their human experience, which is going to likely be intimacy, relationship, sex, and grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are
big kahunas.
The big kahunas. How do I have that quantum sex stuff? What? Tell me about.
I have a course coming out right now on quantum sex. I love it. It was people's favorite chapter. I have a chapter on quantum sex in my book, Quantum Love. But basically, quantum sex is sort of a conglomeration. It has aspects of Tantra, Kama Sutra, Taoism in it, but it's really about becoming aware of the subtle energies that are constantly moving through our bodies and harnessing them. For most of us, the experience of sex, whether we're having sex with ourselves or someone else, there's an emotional aspect to it, obviously, or an intellectual aspect, but most of this physical sensations and even the energetic sensations of sex are localized to the genitals. Right? Like, that's where we feel our pleasure. That's where we feel our arousal. With quantum sex, you learn to move that energy up through the different energy centers of your body. You can have, 7 chakra orgasms. You can move the energy between the two of you. You can play with the energy and all of these. And in the sensation, you're literally pulling up the genital sensation through your body. So it really is powerful. It's extremely pleasurable. But what I have found most exciting about it in the work that I do with people is that for my entire career, the number one question I get asked all over the world, and I speak all over the world, is, from people in the audience who are in relationships is, how do you spice it up? How do you keep it interesting? How do you spice it up? Right. So for so many years, and I still can do that, I would give you tips and tools and role plays and toys and fantasies. And then I could give you 365 of those. And then in a year or maybe a year and a half, because a few of them you would like and do more than once, you would come back and be like, okay, the novelty of those has worn off.
Absolutely.
Give me more. And what I discovered with quantum sex is what we've really been looking for with the novelty that we seek, is what we're really seeking is an experience of intensity, intensity of arousal, intensity of experience cognitively, intensity of connection, right? And so quantum sex, you can do 3,000 times and the intensity is always there. And so it allows for and creates profound intensity as well as pleasure and arousal that is sustainable, that isn't rooted in something new I've never tried before. I mean, it does feel new every time, but it creates an energetic, emotional, and spiritual intensity that is really profound, especially as you practice it.
Yeah. I have to say that, I mean, as you're describing it, that is my favorite sex position. Quantum sex.
Exactly.
And I've had the same question too from folks that are like, how do I spice it up? And I'm like, well, why do you need to spice it up? Like, how is the level of that energetic interchange?
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean?
Not even thinking about that.
Yeah.
No.
And I was like, if that's not there, then, that's spicy as shit.
Right.
And every moment it's changing.
Yes.
Because energy is in flux. It's not static. And so you're in the flux together.
And totally present and totally embodied and totally in your senses.
Ooh, it's so hot.
Yeah.
Dr. Larry, that's so hot. Ooh, God.
Very hot. It's
really hot. And it's, I was recently telling this to my partner, and I was like, penetration, blah, whatever. But this, I can take it or leave it, whatever. Or even all the other, tricks in the trade and whirls of the tongue and whatever. I'm like, this, and I just called it energetic sex. But this energetic exchange, I'm like, oof, the best. And the people who can't do that, they could be hot as can be.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah.
I think most people can't do that, just in large part because it's never occurred to them. There's no roadmap for it. They don't know that it's even possible.
Yeah.
And they've been getting their sex education like so many people from porn, which is the freaking worst sex education on the planet. So I think most people don't have any idea about what's possible on the energetic level, and they get their sex education from porn, which is the worst sex education there is because it's geared toward, sort of a skewed sense of what people look like, even genitally, what turns, you touch a woman's shoulder and she's shrieking in orgasmic ecstasy, or you ejaculate in her face and she's having 12 orgasms, so it's a skewed sense of what turns people on.
Yeah.
It's an externally referenced, it's kind of like we've been conditioned to being dopamine junkies when it comes to sex, right? Yeah. So the reason we keep looking for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing is because the novelty is worn out. And we get aroused with novelty. So we think novelty is needed in order for us to get aroused. But that's not true.
Not true at all. I mean, I was just on Emily, Emily, Sex with Emily's podcast, and I was like, Emily, vanilla is so hot. It is so hot because there's so much in it. And when you start to add all these, like, quote unquote, what I think are sometimes distractions from the actual intimacy of that energy exchange, which is vulnerable as shit and spicy, and you sometimes can't discern where you begin and where you end, and where your feet are and where your head is, and all of a sudden you're in the flux, as I call it, like, and it is.
And it requires a complete presence, vulnerability, and intimacy. I am this leading sex, love, relationship person, and about 10 or so years ago, as I was starting to really explore, I guess this was like 2017 or something, as I was really starting to explore this much more deeply. My husband is my unwitting guinea pig. I do experiments on him all the time. And then I watch what is, like, can he feel me sending energy to this spot or doing this thing, silently that that you wouldn't feel except energetically. And then I watch and see how he responds, like to the pink sparkly vagina technique or something else. And he always would. But I was telling him about some of it, and I was talking, I forget how it even came up, but I was talking about soul gazing. And he said, well, let's do it. I mean, this probably was 10 years ago. And so I'm like, okay. And so we sit across from each other, and we're looking deeply into each other's eyes. And I started to touch him, and he's like, no, don't touch me. We're just going to look into each other's eyes. And I started freaking out. I couldn't do it. He was totally fine, staring into the depths of my soul. My husband of 10 years, who I'd been raising 3, who I deeply trusted. Yeah. I could not do it without touching him or kissing him, which I realized in that moment was a distraction from the intimacy. And I was so appalled at myself. I was like, wait a minute, I can't do this. What's happening? But it was really a wake-up call. Yeah. That I had some intimacy blocks that I would have never thought of, and a way in which I was uncomfortable being totally seen and vulnerable and receiving that without, distracting you by touching your penis or kissing, like making it into something that wouldn't make me the total focus, So that was really powerful and was a huge part. I really worked on that. Now I can stare at him without touching him, no problem. But nice. But I think that, and I'm me. Like, imagine what your average person, it requires. It's extremely powerful and beyond pleasurable, but you have to be willing to be seen.
Yeah, and felt, and
to see and feel.
Yeah. Oof. I mean, I think I stumbled into this mostly from my background in somatics.
Same thing.
And so all these years of like, and I was, a DO. And so like palpation skills and like all these things of like, adjusting a cranial bone, and all of these skill sets. And then like, and getting, again, also like you getting back into my body. And I was like, oh, this is actually where I feel safer. The safest is in this, what you're calling the quantum sex.
This is 5D sex. This is next level sex. Yeah. And it's beyond, the logistics. I mean, there are logistics to it, but it's really much more than that.
I wish it for everyone who's interested.
Yes.
And they can get some of that through your course and through your book, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or come hang out with you at a retreat or something when you're... Yeah. Do you do like quantum sex retreats?
I'm going to start. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm definitely going to start. And I'm actually working on a book right now, Quantum Sex. So more to come on that.
I'm excited to hear that. And is there some of those same, and I'm going to just see if there's a link here, if you're open to it, of like doing that deep work of being seen and being felt. And then in your work on conscious grieving, And I know it could be a leap,
no,
but
it's
I'm
totally,
curious.
no, it's not. It's not, because to have quantum sex, like we were saying, you have to be completely in your body. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to feel it all. You have to open your heart. You have to bring down the walls.
Yeah.
And loss will do that for you.
Yeah, fuck.
But the only way you survive it is by doing that for yourself, you know? And I think that's one of the most terrible, beautiful things about tremendous loss is that, and whether that's the sudden ending of a, you know, of a relationship or a major crisis, like something that causes you tremendous grief and loss, it, like, you know, it's the old butterfly analogy. It literally turns you to, you know, when the caterpillar goes in the cocoon, the caterpillar doesn't grow wings and turn into a butterfly. The caterpillar has it in its DNA that once it's in the cocoon, it literally turns into green mush, decompensates completely into nothing recognizable to its prior self, melts completely, and then rebuilds and reconfigures into this gorgeous, magical creature. And that's grief. If you let it, you know, that's what it can do. That's the metamorphosis of allowing yourself to totally decompensate with containment, obviously, because we have to somewhat keep functioning in the world. And with the knowledge that it's temporary, that it can be done in a stepwise way, that it can be done in a contained way, but that it's a portal to metamorphosis. And quantum sex is definitely, as I'm sure you've experienced, a portal. It's not a painful portal. It's an extremely pleasurable portal. So let's just say that quantum sex is a profoundly pleasurable portal and grief is a profoundly painful portal.
And where does this portal take us?
To our butterfly expression. You know, it takes us to a newer, more actualized, more empowered, more clear, more powerful, more attuned, tapped in and tuned in and purely expressed version of ourselves.
So well said. So well said. And the way you lay it all out in this way of these portals of like, these are human experiences, intimacy, death. And these are these portals more into our humanity, into our humanness.
Yeah, absolutely. And into our power, you know, that loss, in order to survive it, I had to totally commit to my body and listen to her. So I don't say yes to anything that my body doesn't say yes to. I don't say no to anything my body doesn't say no to. And that can be really annoying because lots of things I want to do and my body's like, and lots of things I don't really feel like doing and my body say, let's go. So, but that commitment in and of itself has been unbelievable, like endless gifts come from that. There's so many things like that.
The empowerment, and like that is also just the pure gift of coming back home to yourself is once again coming into the birthright of your power.
Yeah. And your worth, back to self-worth. It's hard not to, you know, when you're in your body, you can, you know, and when you're willing to go, this is the other thing I've learned, that when you're willing to go all the way into the worst, deepest pain, once again, with support, with containment, you are stretching your capacity. So what I didn't realize, which was a lovely surprise, the deeper I was willing to go into the pain, the deeper into pain I was willing to stretch, the higher and more expansive the joy I was capable of feeling. And I thought I could feel joy before, and I could, but I feel a lot more joy now when I feel joy. It's like my capacity has been stretched. And I always knew that all emotions kind of come out the same channel. And when you're squelching one, you're squelching the capacity of all of them. So if you're unwilling to feel sadness, your ability to feel joy is going to be limited to the degree to which you're unwilling to feel sadness, you know? I knew that, but I didn't really understand the extent of it until and how the deeper and wider the pain you allow yourself to feel, the deeper and wider the joy you'll be able to feel. That's a nice payoff.
That's such a profound place that I actually want to land in the profoundness of that. And to say also, thank you for saying yes to us, to gifting us with your incredible wisdom, your story, and the vulnerability of sharing that, and all the things, the gifts that you acquired from that you're imparting on us.
Thank you for having me and letting me take a big emotional poop here.
Oh, the best emotional poop ever. Dr. Laura, where can people find you, hug you, dance with you, learn how to do that quantum sex or grieve with you?
Yeah, I do a lot of ecstatic dancing. You can come dance with me. You can learn all the stuff I'm doing on my website. I'm always putting up the latest retreat or event. I have a big event coming in December 2nd around Good Grief, it's called, Healing from Loss with Love, and all the proceeds are going toward scholarship fund to take grieving mamas on retreat. But the day is about just about anyone who's experienced loss. And I have all kinds of amazing speakers coming, mediums, somatic healers, sound baths, grief experts. So if you go to drlauraberman.com, that's my website. You can also listen to my podcast, Language of Love. You can follow me on social media, all at Dr. Laura Berman. I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Laura Berman Official, where I'm always making videos on how to love and be loved better and grieve better and quantum sex better. And I have a course coming out. Quantum sex.
Well, you better quantum sex better.
Yeah. Why not? We can all quantum sex better.
I bet we can. I can't wait. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And go follow, go hang out with Dr. Laura, go ecstatically dance with her. She is an incredible being in this world.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, including submitting your questions for advice from a Midwestern mom. And don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And you know what? Show us some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.